गालिब ने कहा था कि वो आँख जो क़तरे में दजला ना देख सके वो दीदा बीना नहीं होती। उसके बाद फराज साहब ने कहा कि यही कहा था मेरी आँख देख सकती है तो मुझ पे टूट पड़ा सारा शहर नाबीना। मगर फैज़ साहब ने कहा कि अगर कोई आँख क़तरे में दजला देख भी ले वो बहुत बड़ी बात है, मगर एक फ़िलासफ़र, एक शायर और एक इंटेलेक्चुअल के लिए ये ज़रूरी है कि न सिर्फ वो क़तरे में दजला देखे बल्कि वो दूसरों को भी उस क़तरे में दजला दिखाए, तब उसकी इम्पोर्टेंस होती है। टुडे वी हैव हियर विद अस अ पर्सन हु इज़ एन इंटेलेक्चुअल, who is a visionary, who is an implementer of all these development projects that we have shown you. I have been really impressed by his talks, mesmerized by his talks. He is Dr. Tariq Banuri, whose work could be described as the goal of just globalization, namely the interface between the basic human value of justice and the recognition of global independence. Based currently in Bangkok as the director of Asia's Center of the Stockholm Environment Institute, he has broad experience in government, academia, civil society, and United Nations. He started his career in the civil service of Pakistan, went on to receive a PhD in economics from Harvard University, joined the United Nations as a research fellow at the World Institute for Developmental Economics Research, a model that he developed in setting up and serving as the founding executive director of Sustainable Development Policy Institute, SDPI, in Pakistan. He has served on national as well as international forums for policy advocacy for research, including as an elected member of the Executive Committee of the World Future Council, the chair of the Board of Governors of the International Center of Trade and Sustainable Development, and in the past on the Board of Governors of Pakistan Central Bank, Pakistan's Environmental Protection Agency, the Steering Committee on Higher Education as a coordinating lead author of the Intergovernmental Panel on Clinical Climate Change. Most importantly, Tariq has helped us right from the concept of HDF. He is the one who we consulted for developing the model of HDF. He has been involved with HDF since the beginning and has been involved till today. I invite Dr. Tariq Banuri to please come and give the keynote speech for today. Thank you.
What I thought I would do is to talk a little bit about human development, partly what it means to me, but partly also what it means in the context in which we live, you and I, all of us. I mean, in a sense, you know, what we do in terms of either participating in a process, contributing to it, you know, is a way of giving substance to our lives, you know, and the extent to which this gives substance to our lives, I think, is an important issue. I'm very conscious of the context in which we live. As you know, our keynote speaker, whom I had to replace at the last minute, was a judge of the Supreme Court who could not get a visa to come here. We also know many other people who are in this kind of a situation. There is the historian Emanuel Wallerstein looks at the world today and he says, you know, we are entering a kind of a new dark age when suddenly people's relationships with them would begin to become more difficult. And a new dark age meaning, you know, there's a lot of violence and a lot of problems that we can expect before ourselves. The 21st century is not going to be an easy century for anybody, not only because of the things that Emmanuel has talked about, but very natural things. I mean, this is not the occasion for me to talk about climate change, but climate change is something that is going to completely transform the way we live. And if we keep going the way we are going, it's quite possible that only a few 100,000 or a few 100 million people will be able to survive until the end of this century, given the massive changes that are likely to take place, including in the region that we come from, originally Pakistan. Already climate change is beginning to change the nature of the monsoons, but it might shift to a dry monsoon. And if Pakistan shift and India and Pakistan shift to a dry monsoon, it's going to be a major tragedy. There's already fears that the Himalayan glaciers are going to recede, and if the Himalayan glaciers recede, all our rivers, Indus, Ganges, Brahmaputra, are going to become seasonal rivers, and that's going to create tremendous famine and catastrophe. Already climatologists are talking about tipping points. One thing is going to lead to a lot of other changes. What I'm trying to say is that there is a context today that when we look at the 21st century, it's not going to be an easy century for the people, for anybody. There's also the end of oil. Our entire civilization over the last 100 years has been built upon this free oil resource, very, very cheap oil resource. In another 40 years, it's pretty much going to be gone. And then you can imagine what's going to run all these air conditioners and everything else on which we have become dependent. So the natural processes are also ones in which lots of problems are emerging. But it's not only the natural processes. These things about visas and stuff, there is a particular problem of a geopolitical nature in which we have also become involved. वो गालिब का शेर है कि हम कहाँ के दाना थे, किस हुनर में यकता थे, बेसबब हुआ गालिब दुश्मन आसमां अपना. Quite unbeknownst to us, we have gotten involved in some of these things. The post 9/11, there have been restrictions, humiliations, blocking of opportunities, and so forth. And people are reacting in very different ways. Some people are rejecting, some people are saying completely assimilate, which is very difficult. But other people are talking about how to act in this world. Now the question that I ask myself in this context, particularly thinking about the future, what is it that we leave to our children? What basis of hope do we leave for our children? There are lots of young people here today. What is it that will ensure that my child, when she grows up, will be proud to call herself a Pakistani? What basis of hope am I leaving for her? Not only survival, but a basis for the identity, a basis for the ability for all of us to say we. This is we that I am talking about. Is there a basis for us to say we are a people and we are leaving something for our children so that they too can become a part of that we? What is this thing that we are leaving? And for me, this question is always a haunting one. It's been haunting from a very early age, but from time to time somebody asks a question and it evokes that question. One thing which I mentioned when I was speaking in Chicago, I gave a speech at the Pakistan Millennium Conference in 1999. And I'm an academic, I'm a scholar. As even when you hear me talk, you will see that I have a way of speaking which is a little bit abstract. And I was trying to give a speech trying to understand the political situation in Pakistan, but also more generally. And the analysis that I gave, which was trying to look at some of the critical issues, was very critical of the government, was very critical of the way in which the government had then been operating. In fact, I went so far as to say that government itself should be understood as a criminal activity, and what we should do is to try to see how we can control and limit that criminal activity. And then one young person, Bilal Zubairi, a PhD from MIT, he got up and he said, when you say things like this, he said, you're not the only person who says things like this. He says, I read Ayaz Amir, Ardeshir Kawasji, I read all of these people, and they say things which are very, very negative. They're very critical about our government and about the society and so forth. And I say, what is there for me to be proud about? He said, I become very despondent. What do you have to say to that?